I'm Peter Freer. I'm the founder of Play Attention. So I'm delighted that you're here. I have been in the field of brain research and neurotechnology for about 30 years. And I am delighted to be able to talk to you today about having your brain hijacked, as I do in all of my webinars, so that your brain does not become further hijacked during this webinar. I would like to just have a person-to-person chat with you individually. So if you would, if you have distracting devices around you, you have the TV on, you have your cell phone on with text chats coming in. If you're not viewing me on the cell phone, it's a good idea to put it down. If you are viewing me on it, it's a good idea to stop your chats or your emails from coming in for just a moment so that we can take some time together to share this information and talk on a person-to-person level. This is very important, and it's very related to this entire webinar about why our brains feel like they've been hijacked. I hope that makes sense. Let's continue. The agenda today is to talk and define strictly what is a hijacked brain, the common experiences then that we feel that we have as human beings when we feel that our brain is hijacked. And then we need to talk about tips and strategies to hijack our brains back, to gain the control that we once had. We'll then discuss common themes that we have among all of this discussion, and we'll do a summary. After the summary, if you would like, I will take questions from you and answer them as they come in so that we can have this back and forth exchange. So please save your questions to the very end, and I will answer them at that time. So what is it when we say my brain's been hijacked, right? Hijacking usually is related to airplanes, where hijackers get on an airplane and they take control of the command center, of the crew and the cabin, where all the controls for the plane are. And they take it somewhere it's not supposed to be. So that's the hijacking of a plane. If someone hijacks your car, they pull you out of your car at a stoplight and they take control of your car and they take it away from you. They take control of the car and take it away from you. And this is what we're talking about when we feel like this in our brains, that the control that I once had of this major asset, the most major asset I have, my brain, seems and feels to me as if it has been taken away from me. And that is what we're talking about today. And that's probably why you are here. So when we talk about it, typically it's because we don't think as rationally as we did in the past. We're more emotional than we've ever been in our lives, and most of our thinking and most of our actions are more highly emotional than they are rational. Typically, this is driven by fear and stress and other intense emotions that we're having at this time. And here are some new words for us here. We have obstreperous, bellicose, truculent. In other words, you're more defiant, maybe more unruly than you've ever been in your life, and more subject to get into arguments. But it could be at the very base of this screen, you also see the words indolent, unemotional, disinterested. I think my picture may be covering up some of that. So you may be a combination of all of these things, or you may just basically be focusing on one of them. Does this, so far, is this making sense for those folks here who feel like they've been hijacked? You can put your hand up and let us know. Excellent. So let's look at the anatomy of a crime, right? If we've been hijacked, we want to know what the anatomy of the crime is. So what we'll actually do is take a look at brain anatomy. The frontal lobes are the executives of our brain. They are responsible for our rational thinking, our organization, our planning, our emotion regulation, our attention, our impulse control, many other common cognitive skills that are necessary for us to communicate and interact and have relationships with a healthy brain. Now, even though the command center is located in the prefrontal cortex, the very front of the brain, it is not only that part of the brain that is active when we have all of these things happening, when we have all of these skills and functions. They actually are dispersed throughout various regions of the brain. There is no time that our brain just becomes centered one local area for a prolonged period. The brain, even though it has a command center, also uses every part of the brain that it can to help us with these on a daily basis. But if something is hijacked, if this, and by the way, this is termed under this umbrella, right? The umbrella term is executive function. That executive function is an umbrella term that covers all of these things: rational thinking, organization, planning. Where I could think deliberately and logically at one point, I'm more emotional now than I've ever been in my life. Has anyone here found that you cry more often, you get more emotionally angry more often, you have more trouble with relationships because of this, because this seems to have become a major part of your life? That's many of us here. Has your organization gone down? Your ability to organize your life and keep control of it, and your planning for the future, maybe it's just the future of the day, and you can't even do that anymore. You feel like this is totally apart from you, something that you have no or less control over than you ever have in your life. We have more emotional outbursts. I don't regulate myself as well as I did in the past. I have less attention than I've ever had. And of course, if you're here because of ADHD, it's exacerbated that problem. And of course, impulse control. I have less impulse control than I've ever had in my life. If this is the way you feel, you can raise your hand. If I binge more now than I've ever binged in my life, does this sound familiar? I binge on television. I binge on food. I binge on alcohol. I binge on drugs, right? You are not alone. I know I am talking to you personally so that we can all be on the same page together. But you are not alone in this, and that's why we're having this webinar. So what is the mechanism that could hijack our executive function? What mechanism hijacks executive function? That's the stress mechanism. Now, the stress mechanism actually is a real thing the brain is pre-wired for. And it starts here in this organ that you can see called the amygdala. And that is the organ that sits in front of you. It's internal. And you can see that it has direct connection to the eyeball. And of course, my head's right on the eyeball. So picture my head as one's eyeball. So as it picks up visual and some auditory stimuli, if it is at all alerting to us, and of course, we've lived in a very trying time, very difficult time for the past few years, and we'll go into that in more detail. This mechanism gets activated. Now, what this mechanism does, what the amygdala does, is it sends a code red alert to the hypothalamus, who is the command center. The hypothalamus is the command center. It orders your adrenal glands, which sit atop your kidneys, to release stress hormones. And that is to enable you to fight, flee, freeze, or faint. So typically we fight or we flee, right? That's really what we tend to do most often. If you're one of those that freeze or faint during heavy stress, you're there are less of you in an evolutionary sense, because the reason this whole mechanism was formed was so our ancestors could survive confrontations like this. If I freeze or froze at this point, or I fainted, I became this tiger's lunch. So most of those people, in an evolutionary sense, didn't survive that long. If I learned to fight and I had a weapon with me, I could survive it. If I learned to run when this thing was a distance away, I survived it. And that's the way our brains evolved. And we don't have, obviously, saber-toothed tigers attacking us or a mastodon in our driveway. But that same mechanism that has evolved for many, many, many thousands of years is still there in the brain. And so, since we don't have saber-toothed tigers or mastodons to deal with, it responds the same way to something like a pandemic. So during the pandemic, depression and anxiety rates rose 25% in childhood, but these rates were the same or higher for adolescents and adults. So at this point, when we are subject to stress, we start to get our brains hijacked. Our ability to be able to pay attention, our ability to be understanding, our ability to have self-control and not binge decreased during the stressful period. And it decreased, as you can see, a lot, a significant amount. Now, there is actual biology behind this. So it's not just saying, Freer saying, okay, so it rose, during this anxiety rose 25% among children. So what is the biology behind this? What is the neurobiology behind it? The neurobiology behind it is quite interesting. When we are under stress, and I know this is quite wordy, but I'll quickly summarize it for you. You have neurotransmitters that are so essential for us to be able to live a happy, healthy life with our brain. And these two of them are serotonin and dopamine. Now, when you're stressed, the brain will not produce as much. Essentially, you're getting depleted critical neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. And it can result, the decreased amounts of these neurotransmitters can result in our brain fog, that our memory is not as good as it was. We have lower attention spans than what we had prior to this. And they can make us more prone to addiction and depression. Has anyone found that particularly over the past few years, since we went through 2 or 3 years of a pandemic? Exactly. Now, we also have what's called the blood-brain barrier, the BBB, right? It's not the Better Business Bureau. The BBB in this case is the blood-brain barrier. What the heck is that? Well, the brain has to have a blood supply to function normally. It has to bring oxygen and nutrients into the brain. Now, the barrier is actually a physical filter made out of living tissue that filters the blood as it channels its way into the brain. Because the brain, it's only a 2.5, 3 pound organ in your head, but it is the most valuable asset we have. In other words, without it, we simply don't exist. So it takes care of itself on a daily basis. It filters the blood supply as it comes in so that it is clean and doesn't create any problems, any inflammation. Everyone here is familiar with the term inflammation. I have bad knees personally, so I have plenty of inflammation. So inflammation is a very common term, but if our brains suffer from inflammation, then that obviously would slow down our cognitive function. It would create a situation where inflammatory proteins can get into the brain where they normally were filtered out, because too much stress actually weakens our ability to use the blood brain barrier filters. The filters themselves become weak. Now, in the brain, there is also what is called the hippocampus, and that organ is the center of memory and learning in the brain. In the hippocampus, if we are truly stressed and have chronic stress, it is a critical brain region that basically is very vulnerable to inflammation. And since it is the center of memory and learning, then it is imperative that we keep this healthy. And of course, healthy means lower stress. So there is a biology to it. What I wanted to do in this first portion of the webinar is to give you an idea of what the meaning is behind being hijacked, which I think most of us can identify with now. And then I wanted to give you the mechanisms that are in the brain that promote this hijacking. And then I wanted to take you one step further, so we got down into the biology of the brain. And we can see now how all of this works together to undermine my executive function so that I have less control over my brain. I hope we've kind of followed a very logical path to this point. If everyone's with and you understand what I've been trying to do, and you understand, please give me a hands up. Perfect. And remember, if you have questions, save them to the very end, and then I'll do my best to answer you at that point. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward from here, because there are many other things to learn about this phenomenon, right? Who the heck is hijacking my brain? If this is happening because of stress in my life and COVID and the added stressors that happened during COVID, and I've made a brain now that seems like it is constantly stressed. Is there someone else who could be trying to hijack the way my brain functions? And I think this answer will definitely surprise you. So let me use my first example here. It's Walt Disney. And I want to take this segment with a little bit of humor, but as I expose this portion to you, I want you to take it with utmost seriousness, because to understand what is happening on your cell phone, on your TV, with all the ways that you get information now, you need to understand some things that are going on. And these things are critical to ultimately augment our behaviors regarding these things. So I'm going to take you one more slide forward. Now I want you to picture this as if I had Cinderella in the background, or Snow White, and I had some bluebirds flying around me at this point, just like we were in a Disney film. I was going to play some Disney music back here, but I think I'd get shot for copyright or something like that, copyright infringement. But picture that as Jiminy Cricket talking to you about what's going on at Disney. All right, so let's take it with that lighthearted sense at this point, but let's take this very, very seriously. You don't have to read all that. I'll summarize it for you. I left it in here so that when you're watching the video and you wanted to pause, you could actually see it, what's going on. But Disney, as well as many others, are big businesses, and they have to make a lot of money to keep their shareholders happy. So Disney has put together a package with itself and Hulu and ESPN as their streaming services, and they need to make their customers spend more time glued to that TV screen. This they call internally, they call it hours per subscriber, which is the measure of how much engagement they can keep you on And that's supremely important because the longer you stay, the more money they make. So Disney works countless hours during the week. As a matter of fact, they have, I think it's at least 2 or 3 times a week, they have meetings. Their CEO sits in on meetings to have his team think about ways to get you to be more engaged with them over everyone else. So what they do is they create algorithms that basically try to personalize what you want to watch. They take the data over what you have watched and they go, hey, Alice, I think you like this. Would you like this too? At the end, they may send you a little query at the end of the show. How did you like this show? What would you rate it? Thumbs down, thumbs up, really excellent. Would love to see it again. Stuff like this. So all the time that you're watching, they're taking information because the more personalized they can make their recommendations and they can give you promotional advertisements for it, then the longer you're going to stay and watch. And so if you think, well, I just binge. Well, there's more to just binging. They encourage you to binge. They do every subtle thing to get you to binge and watch more and more. Even if you stopped watching in the middle of a film, they'll send you possibly an email or give you a test. Why didn't you like this? Why'd you stop watching? Why'd you stop watching in the middle of the movie? Why did you stop watching in the middle of the series? And if you give them back that information, they're just going to take it and use it to get you to stay glued longer. Right. So what they want to do is increase your engagement and they want to decrease cancellations. Please, they want you to please stay and keep your subscription going. Because if you cancel, they don't reach their financial goals. And so this was a cute article that was published in the Wall Street Journal just a few days ago. It's very important to understand that this model, they spend millions and millions of dollars to do this in every subtle way that they can. Now, I use Disney because we all know Disney, and I didn't want to irritate you too much about it. But the fact is, it's not just Disney. Every single service we watch, every streaming service we watch does this. They all are silently screaming at you to pull you in. They are silently using millions and millions of dollars in resources to get you to stay engaged. Now, it's not just the streaming services. It's every news outlet that you have. They know how to write the news. They know how to present the news. They know how to present what commercials you may want to see during this hour. All of that is incredibly calculated at this point. So if you think that you're in control of what you're watching, you have partial control because you always have the ability to turn it off. But the people behind this are brilliantly clever. Now, when I say clever, that's not associated with intelligence. Clever is something entirely different. They can manipulate us into what we think, what we do, what we see. And this is a constant way to hijack our brains. So it's not just the TV. It's not just the streaming services. It's all of the apps on my cell phone. They all are all written with this in mind. Algorithms that keep you occupied. Anyone here go down the rabbit hole of YouTube or TikTok? Even you can even sink hours into LinkedIn. Right? These are rabbit holes you can go down to and you look up and you've been there for an hour or 2 hours. And you have no idea how you got there. But it's one video after the next. Making sense? So this media influences greatly how our brains function. Now, I know some of you are going, well, it doesn't affect me that much. Right? But it is, I want to make certain you understand how much media influences our brain. Is everyone here familiar with Sesame Street? If you are, raise your hand. Yeah, there we go. That's a lot of people. Okay, perfect. So Sesame Street, when it first came out, had a very, very rapid presentation rate. So instead of the Count, if you're familiar who the Count was, everyone familiar with the Count on Sesame Street? It's kind of a Bela Lugosi character. So now when the Count comes out and he wants to teach children how to count, he goes, one apple, two apples. Now imagine that getting fired off in their initial attempt to teach children. It was going very fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the whole show was moving at that pace, which now if you watch children's television, a lot of it has gone to that. To keep children's attention due to the algorithms they use, things just flash and blur and go really quick across the screen and don't stay long on any one scene, go right to another scene. It's frenetic. Well, they first tried this with Sesame Street. Many parents called in to the network and said, my kids are off the wall after watching this. What are you doing? They run around the house all pumped up. They're crazy. They can't sit still. And so once that feedback reached the folks at Sesame Street, it became a much more slow and developmentally appropriate pace. Now, so we don't think there is a relationship, but feeding what you feed the brain is much like what you feed the body. If you have a specifically poor diet, then your body starts to deteriorate. If you have a specifically poor diet of stimuli coming to you through television, video, media, your cell phone, whatever, it affects your brain negatively. This is based in science. Did you realize, when you look at YouTube, they have to have live screeners who watch videos and to make certain they are safe for other people to watch? Beheadings coming out of the Middle East, animal torture and cruelty. Someone has to watch that and go, that is not good. We can't put that on. Those people can only last a short amount of time before their brains get PTSD. And so they have to leave that section of the company or they have to retire. But they do that for our safety. And this is incredibly important for you to understand. What we consume with our eyes and ears also affects the way our brains function. Am I being clear? Does everyone understand? Thank you. So the common experiences all of this causes, our brain hijack, causes that we get brain fog. We get fatigue. We get lack of interest. We get loss of control, of cognitive control. We are easily distracted. We have greater stress, and we have a loss of sleep. Anyone here experiencing any of this? Exactly. Well, that's 99% of us here. Exactly. So let's tackle these each one by one and talk about how we can combat it, right? So let's do that first. Let's talk about brain fog. Now, brain fog is not a medical term. It's a colloquial term. It's something that was coined a while ago, and especially during COVID, because COVID symptoms typically caused brain fog, which means my thinking became sluggish. I had difficulty processing information. I got forgetful. I had an inability to focus and pay attention, concentrate. I had difficulty concentrating for longer periods than I had in the past. I couldn't concentrate, prior to COVID. Many people told me I could pay attention for hours in a meeting and participate. I can't. Now they say I can't go more than a couple of minutes, and I just can't follow it. Does anyone here find that they now struggle to recover words or to recall words that they want to say. That these words evade us, elude us, and we think, what is that word I really wanted to use here? That's very common as well. And then we also have things like at the bottom, difficulty in understanding and processing information, especially if it's new to us. This is particularly important. So that's brain fog. So let's get some strategies to combat brain fog. Take breaks. This emphasizes what I just said just moments prior to this. Take breaks from your phone and computer. Put them away. Walk outside. Walk outside in your bare feet, especially if you've got grass, not hot sidewalks. But if you have grass outside, walk in the grass, your bare feet, become grounded. Put your phone and your computer away for a while. Let your brain observe the natural world. Practice positive thinking. Many of us practice negative thinking right now. That's also a result of living with brain hijack, that we constantly think negatively, that nothing good is ever going to happen. You can play a little game with that, by the way. When that happens, that I don't know if I should, I don't want to bother with that. It's nothing good ever comes to that. And it just takes so much time. I don't want to do it. Instead, you can turn that negative thought into a positive thought. You know what? I always feel so much better once I get that over with and I get that done. It just looks beautiful to me. And I love just getting that done. I think I should just do that now. So you absolutely can flip your thought from negative to a very positive, and you can make it a game. So it is very satisfying to you. And if it's satisfying to you, you will let dopamine take over. And it's, when you actually are practicing it, you can get that positive stimulation, and it's rewarding you for doing it. So that's a very positive way of doing it. Reducing stress would be a primary thing. So take out those things in your life that keep causing you stress. Changing your diet to a healthy diet. These are very, very simple things, but oftentimes when we're in a brain fog, we don't consider them any longer, and that's why I've put them all in here. We don't consider these anymore. As a matter of fact, we have a problem here. One of those is apathy or lack of interest. And we need to address that as well, because that if I have a lack of interest in any of this due to brain fog or hijacked brain, then I won't do any of it. Well, that's quite a rut you've dug for yourself at that point. So you can avoid alcohol, smoking, and drinking coffee in the afternoon. Practice stress management techniques like yoga, deep breathing, meditation, mindfulness. Drink caffeine in moderation. Schedule your breaks in your day to avoid mental fatigue. So make certain that if you are stressing yourself out, right, and from brain fog, break things into smaller segments so that you can do them without causing yourself more stress. Minimize your distractions so that you have a clutter-free space to work in. That decreases your brain fog as well, because things get simpler and I don't have to process as much at one time. And then stimulating your brain with puzzles or reading. These are all very, very helpful tips and strategies to limit or combating brain fog. Common experiences, fatigue. We're going to talk about 3 different types of fatigue. And you're probably getting some fatigue right now. Just listening to this webinar may be fatiguing your mind. So we have mental fatigue, right? So we have emotional fatigue, and we have physical fatigue. So those are the 3 general types of fatigue we're talking about. Emotional fatigue, feeling sadness, anger, depression, or frustration for a long period of time. And I know you understand this, right? All right. And then physical fatigue, I feel tired after physical activity such as showering or preparing them, or running, right? That's physical fatigue. But the one I think that's really probably very prevalent among all of us here is mental fatigue, feeling cognitive symptoms like brain fog right now while you're listening to this. By the way, we are recording this webinar so that, if it's caused you to become mentally fatigued all the way up to this point, we've been together about 30 minutes or so, then you can watch it tomorrow at your own pace in bits and pieces to break it down. So we are recording it. You can get a copy of it. We'll send it to you. Be delighted to send it to you. So how do we combat fatigue so we can boost our energy levels? Well, first thing you've got to do is change your diet and make certain that you're not following the binge diet plan. Or everyone here, I would assume, knows what the binge diet plan is. If it's around, I'll eat it, and I'll eat it in abundance. Then everyone know the seafood diet plan? That's a joke, really. If I see food, I eat food. That's the seafood diet plan. So if that's how many people in here, be honest, raise your hand. How many people here are on those diet plans right now due to the stress amounts? Well, that's a lot of us. That's a lot of us. Interesting. Yeah, it's very normal when your brain is not functioning at its peak, then you get into really bad habits. Get regular physical activity, and that means regular. Set a schedule and maintain it. Take adequate rest and recovery techniques, right? Do things in shorter amounts, take a rest, and then go right back to it. And of course, one of the things I created Play Attention for is to use that to manage the way that our minds process data. Created that many years ago, and it's undergone so radical transformations over the years. But the fact is still, I was helping people when we created that. Play Attention has been around for 30 years in various forms. It's in 10 languages right now, and it's shipped globally. It was all meant to increase executive function. And so using that kind of thing to help manage this combats fatigue. It combats brain fog. You'll see that mentioned in here quite a few times because that's what I created that for. Now, many of you are here because you have lack of interest, right? It's hard for you to even listen to this because you already have a lack of interest. I just don't care. I have that attitude. I just don't care. And you lack passion for virtually everything. And you have loss of motivation and a lack of emotion as well. And you may have found this has affected your personal relationships immensely. That resonate with any of us here? Do you ever ask yourself, why do we even bother? Then that oftentimes is accompanied by boredom. You have a lack of interest in doing anything other than maybe laying on the sofa and eating ice cream and potato chips and watching that TV that just keeps you binging. Then we withdraw socially. Right? You withdraw from any social gatherings. And if your friends are calling you to come out and do something, you oftentimes will make basically offer them a reason, an excuse for not coming. No, I really don't think I'm going to be able to make that today. I'm so busy. In your pajamas or in your bathrobe on the bed, right? So how do we battle this lack of interest? You can take on new hobbies. Learn something that you like, right? Get something that you like and attach yourself to it and stick with it. A new hobby could be learning chess, learning a new language, learning how to build something, learning how to fix something, learning how to be a person who shares with others and helps people less fortunate. Those things change the way your brain operates. And they're easy to do. New exercise routines. Start a routine and do it. Make new friends. Find new friends. Change your diet. Remember this changing your diet will be a constant theme in here. Going on a trip, finding motivation, reflect on your negative self-talk and limiting beliefs. Remember the game I told you, any negative thought you have, you can turn around internally. If it's negative, right? I don't feel like shaving today. I don't know why I would bother doing it. And you go, you know what? My face feels so much better. I don't scratch my chin as much. It just makes me feel so much better. I'm going to do that. Change the negative thought into a positive thought. More. Now, I know most of us here would never attempt this, but this is a fantastic picture, right? Switching to empowering thoughts and beliefs. What I'm talking about is, again, negative thoughts to positive thoughts and using empowering thoughts. This will make me stronger. This will make me faster. This will make me process data better. You must start using those and get out of the rut that you've built for yourself since your brain's been hijacked. Create an engagement plan. How I plan to be more engaged with those around me, with my work. Create a plan. Being specific about what you need and want to accomplish, also a great idea. Exercise again, because exercise changes the way your brain functions. Spend time with your friends. It's a great idea. We had dinner last night with friends of ours. They're our neighbors. We've probably seen them in the last couple of years regularly in their yard, see them, pass them, and we have never had dinner together. We had dinner together with them, and they were fantastic people. Very, very good. Great time. But spending time with your friends changes the way your brain functions. Doing things you used to love, like going to concerts or watching movies with loved ones, instead of sitting in a dark room and eating a bag of potato chips in the dark, but with only thing lighting the room is the television screen. Do things with your friends. Get out, go to concerts, take a music or art therapy class. These are things that will help you combat a lack of interest. Of course, right now, you may say, I'm already not interested in being interested. How many people here are doing that? I'm not interested in being interested. And that's not many. I don't know. 6 people raise their hand on that. Very few of us. There are ways for you to become interested in the world again. And one of the things that I want you to think about right now is how dissatisfying it is to have a lack of interest, how unrewarding it is to have a lack of interest in having a relationship. And I want you to also concern yourself deeply with, ponder, and observe other people who have wonderful relationships. And how does that happen? It doesn't happen through a lack of interest, right? So if you're stuck, then you can always get back to this, to doing this, combating lack of interest. Loss of cognitive control. Now, cognitive control is a mental process that basically helps us or facilitates information processing. And this is from moment to moment. So if you have found yourself unable now to change a particular thing that's happening in the near future, let's say that at the last minute you have something that changes, you're scheduled to go out for dinner and there's cancellation and you have a meltdown. Or instead of going to grandma's house on Saturday, we're going on Sunday. And all of a sudden, mentally, you're melting down. And from moment to moment, just if you come in and your significant other is saying, well, I can't do that right now. Can you just give me a couple of minutes? And you hit the ceiling. So processing that information and being able to go with the flow adaptively from moment to moment is really all about cognitive control. And many of us here basically have lost a lot of that ability. If that relates to you, raise your hand, because this is something that we don't talk about much, this loss of cognitive control, but it's very, very powerful. We are not flexible in thinking. We are not flexible in adapting ourselves because the brain is not processing it well. And now you know the anatomy behind all that, why it is not processing all of that well. So the prefrontal cortex is plays a key role. That's where your executive function command center is. Although remember, even though the command center is in the frontal lobes, the whole brain is involved. It is a component of executive function. But remember, we now know what brain hijacking is. We now know what the symptoms of it are, or the characteristics of it are. And we also now know the biology of the brain that affects it. And so now we're talking about how we combat these things. Now, how the heck do we combat this loss of cognitive control? Exercise. This is starting to sound like a common theme here. Or practicing a new and challenging activity such as learning a new language, because it makes you really apply yourself. But do it while having fun. One thing I didn't mention in this is fun. One of the things that help us learn the most is the enjoyment of learning. And in that, the brain gives you a reward. It gives you a dopamine burst for it and saying, hey, that was really good that you learned those 6 new words in Spanish today, or 6 new French words, or 6 new Italian words. That's huge. And it rewards you for it. And that was great because learning a new language helps your brain thrive. Doing memory games, meditation and visualization, increase your executive function. And that's one of the things, play attention, I put in here again, because that's what we do with play attention. We increase executive function. All the games in play attention are built to increase executive function. So it's really important. That's why I built it. That's why we do this. And that's why we're having this webinar. Now, another common experience I guarantee you everyone here is fighting right now is distraction. Something that prevents someone or it's something or someone that prevents us from giving our full attention. Now, for you, it could be just picking up your cell phone and staring at it while I'm talking to you or we're talking with each other. Could be ambient noise in the room. You could have a radio going in the background. Could be the dog, licking his water up in the dog bowl. It could be your cat, moseying around your ankles. Could be active conversations with passengers or colleagues while you're on a train or a plane, and those things just are too distracting for you. You could get information overload from media. We talked about that. Cell phone use, talking, texting, gaming, social media use. We talked about that. Mind wandering, which is really rumination. Your mind starts, and I call this time traveling. We say, in physics, I'm a big student of physics. And right now we say time travel is a possibility, but for every one of us here, we time travel together. Is everybody with me? Probably not. How the heck do we time travel? Well, when you examine it, 1/3 of your life is lived in the past. How often do you think about the past and the regrets you have from the past? Things I should never have done, never have said, and live in that past for 1/3 of your day. And then we time travel to the future, where worry and anxiety and fear lurk. What if I don't get that done? What's going to happen? What if this doesn't happen? And then what could possibly be the outcome? So we're time traveling from the past to the future all the time. One of the places that we live 1/3 of our time is right now, in the present. But if I am distracted, I don't get quality time here either. Do you see this? This is what I term time traveling. I hope this is making sense to you. One third we live in the past. One third we live in the future. One third we have right now, but that's polluted. It's corrupted by all the things we've been talking about. How do we combat that? Well, you can improve executive function, which is what we do with Play Attention. And I can't tell you how critical that is. All right. Meditation also trains your brain to stay focused. Mindfulness exercises, and we have those in Play Attention as well, helps you to do this for prolonged periods of time. You actually can take regular breaks while you're studying so you can improve your focus and attention. Remember, cut your portions of things that you're learning into edible chunks. You can't eat the whole elephant at once. So cut it into edible chunks that you can learn and be satisfied with and go back to a short while later. Eliminate the distractions around you by keeping digital devices away to spend time in nature, right? Exercise, again, this is that theme, because exercise, as I've mentioned before, can improve your focus and increase your dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin levels in the brain. That's all just through exercise alone. So there are many good things that you can do. Here are more. Get enough sleep. Sleep is a common factor among all of these things. If you don't get enough sleep, none of this is going to be possible. Mindfulness that I mentioned to you previously, fully concentrating on and understanding and responding to a speaker can help improve attention. So if you're actively listening right now, have some questions ready for me at the end so we can talk, and this would be part of the exercise for today. This last one is super important. Stop multitasking. Do not have 10 different screens open on your computer at one time. Focus on getting one thing done at a time. If you think you are a good multitasker, I'm going to tell you that there's a 99% probability you're fibbing to yourself. You're absolutely deceiving yourself. And I'll give you a really good example. A lot of us think that we are great drivers. So we can text and drive as we're going down the road. And study after study after study tells us texting and driving is actually even more deadly than drunk driving. We are not good at doing two things like that at once. Don't do it. Do one thing at a time, stop doing one, do the next. Stop doing that, go back to the one you need to focus on. Stop multitasking. Brain's not equipped. Stress, natural human response. This is from the World Health Organization. This is one of the best definitions I could find. It's a natural human response to a difficult situation that causes mental tension or worry. It can be physical or mental and can be caused by an external cause like having a lot of homework or an illness like COVID. Stress can also be physiological, meaning it's an organism's response to an environmental condition. That's from the World Health Organization. It's beautiful. This is what stress is. We all know what it feels like. We don't like it, but boy, do we have a lot of it. If we only had as much money as we had stress, we would all be millionaires. So how do we combat it? Well, here it is. Exercise, eating healthy, stick to a sleep routine, avoid excess caffeine, identify and challenge your negative thoughts. Remember, flip the negative thoughts. That is one of the keys here. We'll play that game. Maybe at the end, we can play a couple of rounds of that game. It depends on how much time we have left. We only have about 5 minutes left, so I have to move at a pretty quick pace. Combating stress, engage in self-relaxation. Take time for yourself, unless you're doing it too much now. It doesn't mean laying on the sofa eating chips. Self-relaxation, maybe taking a very comfortable bath and relaxing, right? Or maybe going and getting a massage if you can. Take breaks when you need to. Seek out social support. Have a network of people that are interested in seeing you be stronger and mentally focused. Connecting with others socially. If you have abandoned that, hijack it back. If it's been hijacked from you, hijack it back. Maintaining a normal routine. Set a routine for yourself that involves more than getting up, getting in your pajamas, your bathrobe, and sitting in front of the TV. All right? Laugh more. Comedy and humor is one of the best therapies we have, and you can find it anywhere. Finally, yoga. Yoga in itself can be life-changing. It's not magical, it's not mystical, but it allows you to be in touch with your body. It's a moving meditation. Loss of sleep. This is super important. Loss of sleep is related to every of the aforementioned common experiences we've talked about. And most all of you here are probably experiencing that now. You're not getting good sleep. The sleep that you do get is poor. You wake up feeling like you haven't slept all night. This is very common, especially if you feel like your brain's been hijacked. It can make you moody. It can increase your brain fog. It can make you more apathetic. It can exacerbate your loss of cognitive control and your distraction level. So how do we combat that? Well, you're going to hear the common theme again in here. You want to make certain your bedroom is the best it can be. Very little to no light. A minute amount of light can disrupt your sleep. So even if you have a clock that emits light, you really don't want that directed at you. You want to make certain as dark as it can be without light being reflected at you. You'll need a good routine. Make certain that you have a routine established and you maintain that routine. And then sleep hygiene is what you do maybe in half an hour before you go to sleep. Is part of your sleep hygiene reading a little bit to let your brain not think about the day? And if you do have to think about the day, journal it before you sleep. If you have not closed all the books on what's happened to you this day, journal it. Make a list. Tomorrow I need to have these meetings to follow up from today. Tomorrow I need to get this done, so that you're not thinking about it all night. You'll have it journaled and you're satisfied with it because you'll know you can open up the journal in the morning and go, oh, here's what I need to get done today. That way your brain is not trying to organize that for you all night, disrupting your sleep. Don't eat or drink right before sleep. You know why. You've been told this for years by your mom or your father. Exercise. Sound familiar? And then play attention is made to increase your executive function so that you can sleep better. So, common themes that we've heard today over and over and over again to combat all of the brain fog that we experience and all of the brain hijacking that we experience and the sleep loss and the cognitive control problems, all of those things that we described during sleep hijacking, is we need to develop a good sleep routine, because sleep is the foundation for everything to having a strong brain and a well-functioning brain. Take breaks when you need to take breaks. That doesn't mean take breaks all day long, right? And don't multitask. Multitasking serves no good purpose for you at this point. Get a healthy, regular meal, a good diet, exercise, play attention to increase executive function. These are all the common themes we've talked about today. Mindfulness technique is a question I'll answer at the end of the program. So keep them till then, and I will talk about them quite a bit. This is one of my favorite slides here. Executive function could put the handcuffs on your hijacker. And in other words, the frontal lobes, we know that's where the command center is for the brain and executive function. It can actually put the handcuffs on your hijacker so that you're hijacking your brain back. The way to do it is to develop your executive function. That's how we do it. It's quite simple, but in order to do that, there are things that you have to practice, right? So in summary, stress and other factors decrease executive function where rational thinking is overridden. We get terribly emotional responses instead of rational. And we know that external factors such as electronic media affect the brain function. So you know that improving your executive function is a solution. It is a complex problem and it takes work to resolve it. This has happened to you over the course of years. You have evolved into this. So it's not going to be one of those, I'll click my fingers and this is all going to change. That does not work. It takes a little bit of work. But while you're doing the work, you can have fun. That's the key. That's one of the reasons I made Play Attention. I gamified the increase of executive function. It's gamified. And so that's what it takes to resolve it. It takes a little bit of work, but we will have a bunch of fun while you do that. Next steps. What I would suggest do is you can take the ADHD test. It's free. Just go to playattention.com, take the ADHD test to tell a little bit about what your ADHD symptoms are, that kind of thing. And we can offer you some solutions with that. Let me just thank everyone for being here and having such a spectacular time together. I hope that you did survive it and that you're able to make some changes in your life.